Why build a studio in India based on everything you've
Yeah,
said?
sure. So I think the one other factor I should probably talk to you about is, as an old guy in the games industry and as someone who's kind of having like a midlife crisis, I would say that, I read this essay by Clayton Christensen called How Will You Measure Your Life? This exercise of when you think about at the end of your life, looking back and thinking about, was it worth it? Like, how would you define success for yourself? And
Mm,
I did have offers for executive roles in which I could have just done the same thing, work 9 to 5, make good money, have a lot of time to
hmm
spend with my family. Then I thought, would I really feel fulfilled? And so,
mm.
sure, I could work a 9 to 5 job, make some money, and then die. And I just was like, no, that just to me just felt so meaningless. And I just felt like I wanted to take a shot at trying to do something meaningful. And so so I would say the two factors that came into play about trying to do something in India was one, I did visit India. So I was invited to an IGDC conference about 5, 6 years ago.
hmm
And what I found was I felt like there were people in India who wanted to make great games, but didn't have the opportunity. And,
mm.
just being in India for the first time and you see like the great disparity between the haves and the have nots. I felt like, well, wouldn't it be cool if I could do something positive? And so having a company that one is strategically so, and let me talk about the strategy a little bit, right? If you're like a veteran group of Western game developers that's super experienced, I'm sure you could be successful.
Mm.
I didn't know that specific team. I just knew that the team that I could put together, I didn't think I could put together a team that had those characteristics that I was talking about that could enable success. And then I thought about India and maybe I thought, well, maybe we could find some people where they would want more opportunity and at least we could find people who could try to, and, give them the opportunity to learn and to improve and grow. And just through sheer hard work could overcome the gap in terms of skill and talent over time.
Yeah.
And for our investors at the time, I basically told them this is going to be a long-term play. No, it
Mm.
turns out it's a lot longer than I thought.
Isn't it
Yeah,
always?
but it was a long-term play, especially since we're trying to do a shooter game. There's a whole backstory behind why we're trying to do a shooter game as well, but at least we'd have a higher chance of success.
I joke a lot that the chance of succeeding in game dev anywhere in the world is low
Yeah.
by default, and you do all you can to tip the scale. What surprised you kind of in India?
Well, I mean, it is a different environment, and I think that I will say, and look, I'm just going to be really direct. So there are a lot of great things about India, and there's some not so great things about India. I
hmm
will say that it is dramatically more difficult than I thought to start a game studio for something as technically challenging as a shooter game.
Hmm.
And so while, I have a lot of friends here in Silicon Valley who are Indian and they are brilliant, like, amongst the smartest guys I know, there are, kind of like a lot of them are, maybe even most of them are Indian in terms of the people who I would consider to be the smartest. But
hmm
what I didn't realize at the time is that when you go to India, and I'm sure there are incredibly smart people in India, but what I didn't understand is that the game industry itself in India is not viewed favorably. And so the
hmm
smartest guys aren't going to be going to a game studio when it comes to like engineering and tech. And so hiring like really high level engineers in terms of having a really solid foundation in terms of like math, logic, that sort of thing has been and continues to be extremely difficult. And so I would probably like, if I were to go back and rethink the strategy, I probably would not have chosen a genre which is as technically challenging as a shooter, because that has really
Mm.
bogged us down quite a lot.
That makes sense. Yeah. What else? So you said there's pros, there's
Yeah, I
cons.
mean, I would say, so look, I would say that the original thesis of finding people who are looking for opportunity who can become great, that has played out. We do have some
Mm-hmm.
people in our studio who are incredible, who could compete anywhere. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm really happy about that. Maybe one of the other negatives is just like, the rule of law compared to the US is not the same. I mean, we had a guy who stole something like, $25,000 through fraudulent
Oh wow.
means, like forged signatures, stole a bunch of equipment, all this sort of stuff. Um, it's been tied up in the courts for 1.5 years. We provided like overwhelming evidence, including
Mm.
messages and all sorts of stuff. Nothing's really happened. It's the rule of law in India is a little bit. I've been disappointed by that.
Okay.
And I also think that what I found, and hopefully I don't, upset too many people by saying this, is that I do think that there is difference when it comes to like, so part of like one of the main motivators for me to start the company was to provide some kind of opportunity platform, right? So somebody who doesn't have
Yeah.
opportunity, to give them opportunity. But I will say that it's really, really difficult. Like for somebody who did not have a solid education, who did not
Mm.
have parents teaching them about, hard work, delayed gratification, investing in themselves and things like that. And to try to overcome that gap in a very small amount of time is extremely difficult and sometimes next to impossible.
Mm.
So, I think that, and this is an argument that I've had with a number of folks in the games industry before about, how easy is it to change people, even more generally. It's very difficult.
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
find that it only typically happens when there is some kind of extreme event or one really strong motivation to change.
Yeah.
And I have found that especially for the kind of people that I would really want to help, those who really do not have that opportunity and they lack the education, they come from a very poor family, things like that. They didn't have those opportunities. Like overcoming 5 to 10 years of education and parenting is super challenging. I really, really like struggled in that and trying to understand how much opportunity do we try to give to folks versus having to think about our business and making the right decisions for the business.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, and this probably contributes to this, that you said it wasn't looked at favorably working in video games in India, and you didn't expect that. How's that played out?
Well, I mean, I think that, so I mean, the good thing about India as well is that there's a lot of people in India. So the way that plays it out is I do think they're there. And we have found some people there. And so,
And when you say they, it's like people who wouldn't be bothered by being in game development or have like
like the
support if they go into it,
right,
or
like the kind of people who can learn very quickly or who already have like good skill that are interested in working in game development.
okay.
And I think they're there. It's just very difficult to find. So you have to find that needle in a haystack. And in the US and for most of my friends who are CEOs of game companies, and I know a bunch of them, they don't have like an HR team generally for an early stage startup. We
Hmm.
do because that's really critical for us, trying to find those people. And so, but then even like building an HR team that's capable of um, of executing a recruitment program effectively, that's also been a challenge over the last 4 years as well. So, anyways,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I mean, but I would say that's part of, I'm never going to give up on that. I'm always going to try to find those who don't have opportunity and give them a chance. But I think
Hmm.
the way that I've changed from before is that it's not, it can't be everybody. And not everybody can be one of these hopeful, what I call a white tiger, because uh, there's a movie actually. My friend produced the movie called The White Tiger, which is about
Okay.
someone in India who came from a poor family, became a driver for a rich family, and then became this entrepreneur. And for me, the main message from this movie, and it was actually originally a book called White Tiger, is somebody who is able to escape from the chains of their circumstances, right? Like,
Yeah.
and this is a much longer story, but like, how does a chicken escape the chicken coop? Uh,
Right.
and so we're always going to try that, but it's not everyone in the company can be. So we're kind of
Yeah.
limiting that.
Got it. And do you think the opinion of game dev has changed in the time you've been there? Do you anticipate it changing anytime in the future?
Even I hope so, because I do think
Okay.
like here in Silicon Valley, if you are, for example, a product manager coming out of gaming, you're kind of viewed favorably, right? As somebody
Hmm.
who's working at the kind of tip of the spear in innovation, that's used to working with many different kinds of disciplines, that's able to navigate both creatives as well as engineers and more technical people. So
Hmm.
there are a lot of skills that you learn as a product manager in gaming that is highly desired by high tech. And so you see a lot of people from gaming go to Netflix or Amazon or Google or wherever. And that kind of an attitude or perception doesn't exist in India yet. I don't think
Mm.
it's really changed too much since I've been here. Maybe it's become a little bit more favorable as more game companies find success, but that really hasn't happened big to a large degree yet.
Got it. Got it. So there's sort you're asking people when they work for you to take like a social capital hit kind of in their own life.
Well, I do
Um,
think like there are some people who are in gaming just because they're so passionate about it, and those
yeah.
are the people that we're trying to find. But
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
also, in some cases, the decision to work at a company may not actually be a single person decision. It might be a family decision, right? And so one of the other things that
Yeah.
we do is we try to prepare materials to help the families understand why gaming is actually a big and growing market, and why
Hmm.
going into game development actually can be favorable if you wanted to go into another industry, for example. And so there's going to be like this process of creating documents and of like education for some of the folks who we recruit. And so we've made that part of our process, and hopefully that has an impact.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I would say that in the Western world, it's rare that you're creating material for somebody's family to help convince them that they should support this decision.